Oh, this is a quick video just to show how I use a router to template route lids for these wormery buckets. This is the smallest size one. I think it's a 5 litre container, just a reclaimed container. I'm just making these lids so they fit on. So the way I make these is I cut a rebate around the outside so the centre section locates into the bucket. And these buckets being rectangular, once they're full of material, they tend to distort a little bit, so I've got a slightly sort of oval lid. But what I've made, this was just cut out of 6mm MDF. I made a cardboard template to fit inside the container. Filled the container with water so it's kind of slightly distorted outwards. Put a piece of paper over it, drew around the top with a pencil, cut that out, transferred it onto a CAD package, computer package, drew it out so it's symmetrical, put some holes in there, so I've got a hole in the centre and then 2 holes that stops the pattern from revolving. And then I cut it out by hand, did a few test fits, made sure it fitted in okay. Once I was happy with the fit, then I'll screw it to the buffalo board, which is this marine plywood with a kind of brown waterproof covering, and then I'll make the actual lids themselves. So that kind of fits in. I'm doing this one-handed because I've got the camera in the way, but there you go, you can just see fits inside nice and neatly. And they're quite good for just general purpose containers, just for storing things. You can stack them as well, which is quite nice. I'll just move that to one side because I'm going to be using a router. Once again, every time you use power tools, make sure you're using eye protection, ear protection as well. Routers are quite loud. I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see on camera, but I'll just sort of talk you through it, and then I'll keep quiet once the machines are running. So what I'm doing here, I'm just screwing this down to the buffalo board. So I've got one centre hole, that's the main one that holds it down, and then these 2 small screws just to sort of stop it from revolving. So I've got 2 routers. This is a 1/4 inch router. This is quite small, like a kind of palm router. It's got a plunge router base on it as well. This is a Bosch, and if you can see, I've got quite a well used and abused cutter on here. That's a 1/2 inch cutter, and it's got a ball bearing guiding a sort of pattern routing bit for routing around patterns or kind of templates. And I've set the depth on here, so I'm just going to route down to half the thickness of the material. This is quite a reasonable amount of material to take off in one go, but the problem with ball bearing guided router bits is you can't adjust the depth of cut because you're limited to that bearing, and it's that ball bearing which runs around the pattern, so it ensures the piece you're routing is the same shape and size as the actual pattern. Once I've cut the rebate, and you'll see in a minute, I'll use a second router. This is a 1/2 inch router. This is much more sort of industrial sort of machine, and this has got a 1/4 inch router bit, and then I've got this template guide bush here, which is 30mm, and that gives me the offset for making the rebate around the edge of the lid. So I'll quickly route this out. I'll wear goggles and ear defenders, and then I'll just explain what I've done with the router. When you're using a router, hold it nice and firmly in 2 hands, and always start it away from the material, because otherwise it can snatch and kick back. So I'll switch on, and then I'll just show you what to do. One thing I've just noticed is the clamp's probably in the way there, so I'll just move that to one side. That was from when I routed out the previous one. And then it's always a good idea to make sure it's nice and secure. Make sure your cable's out the way. When you notice, I'm not sure if you noticed or not, but when you're using the router, let it run down to a stop before you leave it on the bench. Sometimes people kind of, especially in a noisy workshop, if they're using a machine like this, they can't hear it still running. They might even left it switched on, they might flick the switch and it hasn't switched off properly. They'll touch it on a bench like that and that'll kick back, so it's a good idea. All I did there is I just put it down, keep a hand on one hand on the handle just to make sure it's nice and secure, so it's not going to vibrate and fall off the edge of the bench as it's all running down. And you can see I've routed round the rebate here, but what I've noticed where I started off, I haven't kind of started and finished in the same place, so there's a little step there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do another pass round there, the same depth. It's not going to cut much material off, but it makes sure it's smooth and level with that pattern. What I'll do is I'll take away a little bit more of this material, so when I'm cutting out with the 1/4 inch bit, it gives me something to start off. Yes, I just caught that little piece around there. That's taken off, so it's nice and smooth now. So this is the 1/2 inch router. I probably shouldn't use it like this, but there's two handles. One handle's actually vibrated off. This is quite an industrial machine, but the problem is it's about 20 odd years old now, and every time I use it, another kind of bit drops off. I've taken off the kind of wing nuts and bits and pieces like that. There was a clip to hold a template collet guide in there, which has disappeared as well, but it still works very well. I think it's from original brushes as well. It's pretty cool. I mean, that's the thing, these machines are quite expensive to buy, but they'll last for years. So I'll put the headphones on. Because I'm only using a 1/4 inch router bit, I don't want to take too much material off at once. It's a carbide bit, so they keep their edge, but they can be quite brittle as well, so they'll tend to break off if you try and overload it and push it through too much material at once. This is birch plywood as well, so it's quite a dense material, and it's got a really quite a potent adhesive on there as well. So I'm going to cut this in 3 passes. What I like to do, I've taken it down so it's level with the rebate there, and then I'll probably do about 2/3 of that, leave a thin layer, so where I'm kind of leaving it attached to this piece of waste material, and the last pass will only be cutting a thin amount of material at one go, so it's not going to be struggling, and then I'll probably give you a neater edge on the veneer on the other side. So what I'll do is I'll drop down, well, you'll see what I'll do. I'll put the router on top of here and then lower the cutter so it's about 2/3 of the way, and I'll sight onto the side to make sure it's the right sort of depth. So I've set the depth. Now I'll just do one pass around here just to cut this piece out.